How's everybody doing today? Good to see you. I don't know if you know this about me. I'll tell you a little bit about me. I like debate. I like ideas. I like words, well-turned phrases. So I like to watch lawyers, movies about lawyers, Few Good Men, stuff like that, where they argue. In the arena of debate, that's interesting to me. I like words. My oldest daughters will tell you that they figured out pretty quickly that if they had done something wrong, but they could get me to laugh, or could show that they had done it with a well-turned phrase, a good argument, that they could get away with it. Kinda. And they knew that. But the other thing you have to know about me is I spent some time in the military, so I have what's called gallows humor. Does anybody know what that is? It's very black humor. So you look at something and go, oh, that's horrible. And I look at it and go, oh, and I'll crack up because I just have gallows humor. I'm the guy at the bottom of the gallows who's cracking jokes. Gallows is where you hang somebody. And that comes from the military. It's just a way of dealing with pain or suffering. You know, when everybody's in pain, everybody's cold, and everybody's hungry, the best way to deal with it is to crack a joke. And you can kind of deal with it. I'll give you an example of this. Of my two oldest daughters, my Emily is the second one, so they're Irish twins. I have two sets of Irish twins. Anybody know what an Irish twin is? It's one child born and then the next one's born 13 months later. Irish twins. I've got two sets of those.
Wow.
So Keishla and Lisha are Irish twins, and Danielle and Emily are Irish twins, and Lizzie's in the middle. So my Emily was at school, and she went to a school here in San Angelo. It was called Cornerstone Christian School. I think that Cornerstone Christian. And at the time, you have to know that Cornerstone Christian School was, at the time, it was almost a mission, and it was run kind of completely differently than it is now. And my grandfather, who taught math, taught the gentleman that was very prominent there. His name was Grady Rowe. And he was Grady Rowe's mentor teacher at Central High School. My grandfather was a mathematician, math teacher. Anyway, so we sent our kids to Cornerstone Christian. And one of the things that they would do is they had chapel every day, and then they would, do, I guess, their stuff, and then they would do prayer. And they're very strict. And so if you didn't bow your head and close your eyes, you got in trouble. Well, one day, my Emily got in trouble because she's always kind of just a little bit, not so much rebellious, but she's kind of like me. She's got a problem with authority. I have a problem with authority. I don't like your authority. I don't think you should have it over me, and it grates. I don't like to be told what to do. So one of the teachers called her to the office and said, I saw that you did not bow your head and close your eyes today. You're in trouble. And Emily said, how did you see me? So the teacher called me. This is what happened today. She said, how did you see me? I go, well, how did you see her? She goes, Mr. Walston, you don't understand. I go, no, that's a pretty good turn of phrase there. That's insightful from a child. How did you see her? Was your head bowed and your eyes closed? Well, I'm the teacher. So it's different for you? Tell you what, we're just going to let this one go. Let it go. You got beat by a 10-year-old. Sound fair? So I like that. I like wit. And that's what that is. It's insightful. It is the ability to look at something maybe a different way. So let's do that today. Let's turn to Mark chapter 12. And this is one of my favorite passages with Jesus. Because in current parlance, what Jesus does here is he owns them. And I mean it is a complete owning of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. He ends them. Mark chapter 12, verse 14. And when they were come, they say unto him, Master. Now, you got to look at these jerks. They always start off, when somebody comes up to you flattering you, with a question, it's leading into trouble. So they go, Master, we know that thou art true and carest for no man. Meaning, you don't hold anybody else above it. You treat everybody equally. We know that you're true and you treat everybody equally. For thou regardest not the person of men, but teachest the way of God in truth. Now that's interesting, because they are saying something true. They don't mean it, but they're speaking to God, and they're saying he's true, he doesn't care for any man above any other man, and he regards not the person of men, and he teaches the way of God in truth. They don't believe it, but they're saying it. Is it lawful to give tribute to Caesar or not? Now, does anybody know what tribute is? No, tribute is tax. Tribute to Caesar. So in other words, that was one of the things in the time of Rome. Rome raised taxes. One of the things that Rome did was build roads. And they took over entire swaths of land, countries. And the way they did that was they raised taxes. And so the taxation was very high. And what they're asking here is a trap. And it is a brilliant trap. Because they're asking Jesus, do we pay tribute to Rome? Or are we Jews? See, if Jesus says, yes, pay tribute to Rome, then the Jews are going to hate it. Because he's saying continue to pay tax and to be under their boot. But if he says no, that's treason. And they can kill it. It's a brilliant question. If you want to trap someone to kill them, that's the question. They do it in public. There's a crowd, and they ask him the question, and they've thought about this, and they've got him cornered. They just forgot one thing. This is God Almighty. This is not just one of the Pharisees. Shall we give or shall we not give? But he, knowing their hypocrisy, said unto them, why tempt ye me? Bring me a penny that I may see it. Now, a tribute penny was one created by the Romans, and it was stamped with Caesar's inscription, his face, his profile. Stamped with it. It was either Caesar, Julius Caesar, Caesar Augustus, or Caesar Octavian. And this tribute penny was what you used to pay the tax. Okay? So it is a custom. But notice what Jesus does. It's brilliant. He doesn't reach into his pocket, does he? How many of you believe that Jesus was poor? Raise your hand. All of you are wrong. Jesus was not poor. Wait a minute. What? Jesus wasn't poor. There was so much money in his ministry that Judas could steal from it. Judas was the treasurer. He guarded the money bag. Jesus bought food for people. Jesus paid a tax with him and Peter with a gold coin that came out of a fish's mouth. There was money that came into his ministry. He supported 12 dudes. Do you know how much I can eat? A lot. I guarantee you I could eat more tacos than anybody in here at a sitting. Now imagine 12 of me. You got to pay for that. When you're sitting here watching the riots in Portland, the riots in D.C., if you ask yourself a question, who's feeding these kids? Do you have teenagers at home? I do. They're hollow. I could pour food down my kids like that. And they're like, I'm hungry. Who's feeding them all? Who was feeding these people? Jesus wasn't poor. Poor in spirit, meek in spirit. Financially? No. How many of you believe Jesus had a house? Raise your hand. Everybody raise your hand. Because they asked him, where do you live? And he said, come and see. Look that one up. That's your project. Come and see. He says, Master, where do you live? Come and see. Who has a penny? He doesn't reach in his own pocket. He says, who's got a penny? And they brought it. And look at me. He holds it up. Remember, there's a crowd around him. And he says, what? Whose is this image and superscription? And you have to imagine the scene. They bring him a penny and he holds it to the crowd and he says, so there's a tradition going on here. Something happening that everybody knows. It's common to everybody. Because he holds it up. Whose image and superscription is this? And they all said what? Caesar. They didn't say it like that. It wasn't an answer. They said it like this. Whose image and superscription is this? And the whole crowd went, Caesar. In that second, with that question, it was done. Because tradition had that if your image or your name was on something, you owned it. It was your property. So when he holds it up and he says, whose image and superscription is this? Every Jew there went, oh, he's using biblical allusion. He's pointing back to something and saying, if your name and face is on it, it's yours. When he holds it up, everybody instantly has an aha moment. Oh, that's Caesar's image. Therefore, it belongs to Caesar. And Jesus says, render unto Caesar what's Caesar's, render unto God what's God's. Brilliant. That's what I call a smoking. That's where the Pharisees and the Sadducees walk back to wherever they came from with their tails on fire. Smoking. Smoking ruins. Turn to Luke 23. We're going to pick it up in verse 36. And the soldiers also mocked him, coming to him and offering him vinegar. Jesus is hanging on the cross. And saying, if thou be the King of the Jews, save thyself. And a superscription also was written over him in letters of Greek and Latin and Hebrew. This is the King of the Jews. Now, what did we learn earlier about superscriptions? If your superscription and your image is on something, you own it. Jesus is on the cross, and what is above him? A superscription. And that superscription says, King. Who owns it? Jesus. Jesus is the King. I don't think you're getting that. That's his image there. It's his superscription. He's King. He's King of atonement. He's King of forgiveness. He's King of all that's died in your life. He is King. Render under God what is God's. Render under Caesar what's Caesar's. But what belongs to Jesus is he's King of all. Turn to Genesis chapter 1. Verse 26, and God said, let us make man in our image, and after our likeness. Stop. You are stamped with the image and likeness of God. I don't know where you are today. I don't know what you're struggling with. I don't know what challenges you have in front of you, but I can tell you this. You belong to God. You are His. And He is King. Serve Him. Have a great day.